Welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast. My name is Pete Flecha, and joining me as usual is my good friend, Mr. John Nicholson. John, how you feeling, man?
Are you feeling
paranoid, secure?
man. I'm, you know, I was feeling a little paranoid, but then I decided to get kind of crazy. Like I've been setting up like a local, AI agent, and I'm just trying to grasp on the security. So I've got like my jump box that it can talk to and a separate network that I don't even, it's got its own AI jail. I'm kind of worried though about it escaping containment. So I've got some slight worries, but I think, it is nice though being able to feel like I'm in control of the AI rather than it in control of me.
Yeah, that's a good plan, man. Stay in control of the AI for sure before it takes control of you. Yeah, well, I thought you'd feel a little bit more secure. A couple of weeks ago, we were in at the Minneapolis VMware Connect, and we got to talk to Bob Plankers, and he made me feel secure. But apparently, you were not secure enough, so we had to bring him back. So, welcome back to the podcast, Bob Plankers. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure to see you two gentlemen.
Absolutely, yeah. This time virtually, but yeah, this one's going to be slightly different. I feel like we only got a few minutes with you, and we had some good conversations at the VMware Connect. But you gave a really interesting internal discussion recently that I saw at our week of enablement. I thought it was pretty powerful, and I thought it might be good content to share with our audience. And so I thought that might be a good way to kick this one off. And it's a lot about AI and security AI. And as we both know, John's very insecure when it comes to AI. He plays with a lot of different toys at home. And last time I won't tell you some of the stuff he gets into at home with his AI, but
you don't try it, right? How are you going to know if you don't try it? Yeah. So.
Yeah, but he's got himself in a bit of a pickle, so maybe we can help him out. But why are people so worried about AI in general?
Well, when we first talked, a lot of these frontier models, some of the new frontier models, the Mythos stuff had just been announced. Anthropic had just released a blog post with, like that. We were one of the first groups of people, one of the first organizations with access to this model. And these models, and it's not just about Mythos, and it's not just about frontier models either. What John is doing at home, these models are getting crazy capable. And so with it comes some, everything that we think about AI, we think about it as a force multiplier. And, the stuff that I'm doing, I can do faster, I can do better. I've got a little buddy to help me now do this stuff or whatever. Well, the attackers have a little buddy now to help them too. And so over the last few weeks, I think it's been month and a half since we talked, the industry started really thinking about this, and they've decided that we've all kind of collectively decided that we're worried about AI in a couple of different ways, in 4 different discrete ways, really. One, it's really good at finding exploits, finding vulnerability, not exploits, but vulnerabilities in software, and then writing the exploit for them as well. And this is especially true when it's got source code to deal with. And, when it can see the source code, it can see all the bad stuff that might be in there or whatever, all of the gaps and cracks that humans have left, because humans are human. And yeah, it just happens. Compilers don't catch all of that stuff. And and this is especially awful for the open source community because everyone gets to see the sausage being made. If you go back and think about Log4j a few years ago, where it was a true 0-day vulnerability, the vulnerabilities got dropped in the world and we all got to see it all at once. That's kind of what's happening in the open source community. And of course, open source, Linux especially, underpins everything that's going on in the computer world nowadays. And so, yeah, and I heard a joke a few weeks back that the reason they're called 0 days is because there's 0 days between them now, but it's not that funny, it's just, it's happening, and so finding those, fixing them, it's a good thing, but there's, it's a good thing that this stuff is getting fixed, but it's going to be chaotic for a little while. The second thing is that, so all these vulnerabilities, there's a lot of organizations that have decided over the years that, vulnerabilities and patching is a lot of work, and they weren't really up for the process changes to make it less work and all that stuff. So they just decided to focus on the critical vulnerabilities. So they only patch critical vulnerabilities. Great. That leaves all these moderate and low vulnerabilities. So all vulnerabilities are scored on a scoring system, which is
Like
kind of turning out
Olympics,
to
1
be
to 10. It's like
yeah, exactly. CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And 10 is, oh my God, we're going to die. 1, 0 is, well, why did you even report it? That sort of thing. But, so there's all these 6s, 7s, and lower that are unpatched in all these organizations because that's work, and
Well,
I get it, but
that was always fascinating to me when people would take this approach, because I would also see people like, well, I just want to apply the security patch for the 9 and not the 6, and I
yeah,
don't want
well,
the
it's the
feature
same
patch.
patch,
And like,
like,
well, and
you know,
it's like, okay, other organizations are patching all of it, and the
yeah,
QA
just punch
matrix is
it. If
generally patching
you
all of
can
it. And you want to be
patch,
a weird snowflake.
yeah,
Yeah.
just push the patch it all button. If you're going to bother to do one, just do all of it. I take some criticism for that view, but whatever. But turns out these AIs are really creative when it comes to taking the vulnerabilities, either ones that it's found or ones that have been found before, being able to see if they're still there because it's it can read version numbers and all that stuff, and it's got all of the knowledge of humanity in its proverbial head, and so it can take this stuff and chain them together. So a moderate vulnerability, there's a whole lot of situations where a couple of moderate vulnerabilities, you can chain them together to make a critical one, and yeah, humans weren't very good at that, and attackers just didn't have time to deal with it. So, the ransomware gangs in the world were just kind of hit and run artists. They moved on,
The guy who had a good exploit and and a specific firewall wasn't really good at all of the potential exploits when they ran into a Windows server behind it. And if they hit a random BSD server, they're like, you know what? I refuse to learn BSD. I'm giving up. I'm moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the absolute truth, and so yeah,
Attackers are lazy. Like they kind of were.
well, they're lazy like sysadmins are, like they create toolkits and time savings and all that time saving utilities and all that stuff for themselves. It's just that their ultimate goal is nefarious is all, like they want to defraud humanity and ride around in their yachts on the Mediterranean, like, and whatever.
No judgment.
For that.
Caribbean's where my yacht is next week. So
okay,
don't ask questions about how I paid for it, Bob.
I won't. But yeah, so chaining all those vulnerabilities together, that's trouble as well. And then so traditionally, because the attackers didn't have a whole lot of time, as we've been talking about, they built a toolkit. They compiled their malware for Windows or Linux or whatever, and they put those same binaries on absolutely everything. And so the first defender, the first security person that found it, computed the SHA-256 hash for it, uploaded it to VirusTotal or whatever, and then everyone could see it, and everyone could identify it. Well, starting last summer, really, Brickstorm was the first family of malware where the APTs, the threat actors, started using AI, and they started customizing the malware for each victim. And so signatures are dead, like basically AI, where humans don't have time to deal with this stuff. AI has got nothing but time, and and it can do this. It can figure out what's your environment set up as. It can poke around. It can do it fast. It can do it slow. And velocity is a whole other thing. It can do it fast, but also it's patient. It can do it really slow below your monitoring thresholds too, and that's a problem. Lots of problems. So, and then the fourth point is basically just that it can run the whole. It's gone this far. Why not go the last step and just run the darn attack?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So that's why
this might me be being optimist here, but I know like pre-AI, all these vulnerabilities laid dormant for so long, and then now that AI is around and it's doing all of this scanning, is there a time when like we have to see all these vulnerabilities, we address them, and then all of a sudden, then it's kind of done, or is this ever never ending?
That's the hope. But turns out these AIs finding vulnerabilities and writing code that doesn't have vulnerabilities are two distinctly different things.
Sure.
Both for AIs and humans. And it's always I have
sinking boats and making an unsinkable boat are two very different problems.
Yeah, and it's always easier to destroy than create, right? And so So the AIs will, I like to think, I'm also an optimist, Pete, and I'd like to think that we will get through that this is a lot of technical debt right now that's all coming due, and it's all coming due at the same time, and it's going to be a real pain. And there's a lot of organizations that don't understand what's happening to them, and I feel for them. That's why we're trying to get the word out, like, hey, one, we've got capabilities around this that can help defend these things against these things. And two, like, you need to start thinking differently about some of the stuff, all the old guidance, all those old things, zero trust. The thing, zero trust is this idea that people have been kicking around for 20 years, but no one ever really does it because it means hard conversations, telling your identity team that you're worried about, if there's an incident, if they have a breach of some sort, and they take it personally. I've had identity teams yell at me that, like, oh, you're accusing us of being insecure. No, I'm just saying that you're a big target, guys, and so zero trust, reducing some of that trust, removing it, thinking about the crap that you've got in your environment, and do you still need it? That free appliance that you downloaded 5 years ago is, all that stuff. And so, there's just a lot of thinking about that needs to happen, and a lot of just base security that needs to happen in organizations.
That Windows 2000 server that's sitting in the closet that nobody knows what it's doing actually, but don't turn it off.
Well, you're a little afraid of it.
HVAC and doors is my guess at this point. Like, anytime I see an Optiplex that's time traveled through several decades, like, I feel like that's what it controls. But
yeah, I did a demo not that long ago of we were talking about how VCF can protect workloads, and the workloads don't even really know what's going on. vDefend can firewall things and secure things. They have no idea. vMotion happens, the workloads get no idea. And my demo VM was a Windows Server 2000 VM. Had no idea that it was being encrypted, no idea any of that stuff. And I actually used AI to create a little Windows app that was like a fake payroll app that was running on it, and which was actually kind of interesting. Telling an AI that, hey, you need to build this for Windows Server 2000. I think it actually had a smart remark about what I was doing.
I'm scared. Bob's giving people ideas. They're going to keep running that Windows 2000 box until 2050. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, all the vulnerabilities in those are pretty well known. So AI, no problem for AI,
So, Bob, what are, we've got this new landscape, these new concerns. What are the lowest hanging fruit? Where should people start in terms of trying to fix, their actions, their processes? It does feel a little overwhelming, and I feel like there's a lot of vendors that are saying, like, I have a magic shield that'll protect you. Buy my magic AI shield.
Yeah, magic.
It's quantum resistant, Bob. It's quantum resistant.
Quantum resistance isn't going to help you here. Like there's this. So one, you're right. There's a lot of folks that are saying, hey, we've got magic shields, and no such thing exists. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch sort of thing. Like, there's going to be some work that needs to go into these things. And two, many of us got into computers because we didn't want to deal with people and process, and all of this stuff is people and process stuff. And the joke's really on us, and the patching is not a technical problem. You can roll up on any machine, hit the patch button, and just walk away. Let it do its thing. But, it's organizations that are worried about it, and yeah, patching. So let's take patching, for example. That's a good starting point. People need to get in the habit of patching everything, and they need to do it on a regular basis. They've always needed to do it on a regular basis, but now it's really important. And instead of trying to front end and trying to predict the outcome based on, magic 8-ball sort of feelings, and that they need to actually prepare themselves to be able to recover if something does go wrong. 95% of the time, nothing will go wrong, probably more than that, but the occasional, well, and when I'm talking about patching, I'm not just talking about VCF. I'm talking about workloads, Linux, Windows, all of that stuff. You apply a patch, something changes. How are you going to deal with that? And if you solve the how are you going to deal with that problem, you solve it for all kinds of stuff, human error, failed application upgrades. You just get all of this resilience for free based on all of this work that you did to figure out patching, right? And so that's That's a start. That's one parallel thread that organizations can pull on. Identity and zero trust. Identity is a big way that organizations are being breached. Attackers are stealing administrator credentials for VCF and vSphere, and then they're just logging in. And when you log in as an administrator, guess what? You're an administrator. Surprise, surprise.
But Bob, that specific scenario irks me because 90% of the time I see some Twitter thread of new ransomware attack on vSphere, super vulnerability, and I look through and it's Active Directory got compromised, no two-factor.
What are you doing about this, Bob? What is VMware doing about this? Nothing. It was an Active Directory breach. You didn't patch your Active Directory because you're scared of it. You haven't patched it for 6 years. It's got massive vulnerabilities. An attacker looked at it funny and it regurgitated credentials.
I know you advocate for identity separation, so run a separate identity provider, in the back end that's completely segmented for the management infrastructure. I'm curious if some of the reason why people end up with ancient Active Directory schemas and unpatched, you're only as weak as your weakest domain controller. And part of the challenge is people are scared to patch those things because they're afraid of all the downstream applications. An analogy,
everything trusts it,
And so, but if you segment it and it's just the management plane and it's only just going to annoy the admins if it's down that day, then suddenly you can run ahead and you can patch more aggressively. Because I think about
brain ideas here.
I think about change control. Yeah. And when I had, places that they put everything on one storage array, and it was a really good storage array, really nice storage array, the best storage array. But the change control that you oversaw that storage array that had every single application was the most stringent SLA'd application. And so then VDI, which you may have been, willing to be a little more loosey-goosey on your upgrade cycle with, it couldn't get the new benefits of the new feature because you were at the mercy of the EMR or something else. So.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, John. And these ideas like cutting yourself loose, having different, we refer to it as blast radius, it seems pretty violent, whatever. But, when one of these things is breached, when your identity provider, your corporate identity provider, it's a huge target, and attackers go for it, and when you haven't patched it because you're scared of what might happen, it's a freebie, and then everything downstream of that. It's there's been compromises where we hear of that attackers have taken over the Okta tenant for an organization. Everything trusts that. And so the identity provider admins are implicit admins of absolutely everything downstream of it, and people don't realize that. I talk to people and they go, nuh-uh, it's like a bunch of 10-year-olds.
Active Directory, the only difference between, an enterprise and domain admin and God is God doesn't think he's an enterprise admin. The capabilities.
God knows better than make himself an put him in the enterprise admins group.
But it's the permission structure there. And so it is interesting because I feel like this kind of has gone in waves that there was a long time there of hey, silos are bad, unify all your management, fewer panes of glass. That has been the progression of the industry. Well, stop having local law, put everything in one place.
Silos are bad, and so one of the things that we also, when we talk about this at length, and I've got some talks out on YouTube about this, we get organizations that say, we're not creating another identity provider. We've got this under control, whatever. That's fine, whatever. But other organizations have thought about it. And hey, what if instead of having just a VCF team or a virtualization team, what if we had an infrastructure team and we just took somebody off of the identity team and just kind of had them help isolate this stuff over for just the infrastructure, and what if we took somebody off the network team and put them on there, and so that there's still domain expertise and that, but it's still, you get the benefits of isolation, and it's more stuff. Yeah. Having two identity systems instead of one, especially when you talk about not hooking up. So the other thing about having your own isolated identity provider is that you don't hook it up to the HR systems that do account provisioning. You don't hook it up to all of these things because that's trust.
No easy password resets. You got to.
Oh my goodness! The attackers are calling help desks, impersonating people, and getting just to reset their password. Which is right up the help desk alley. I mean, they want to help; it's in their name.
I recognize the voice that had been cloned by AI.
that if you an administrator, a VCF administrator's password reset should be done in person. You should be able to reach out and touch the person you're resetting, or you need a safe word or something like that. But you can't if you're fully remote. But if you can't, if you cannot write that stuff down, you can't record it
Rob, I
anywhere.
need you to hold 4 fingers in front of your face right now when you say this.
Well,
So.
and AI.
So it shouldn't be under my keyboard.
Yeah. Asking people of certain nationalities to insult their leaders, that's another.
I have loved some of the unorthodox defense against AI attacks coming from certain regions.
Yeah, North Korea and stuff. But but if you can't reach out and touch the person that you're resetting the password for, especially when they hold the keys to all of the data inside of an organization, the answer is no. John, I've known you for how long now? For years and years and years and years. I'm not going to reset your password. We need to figure out a way for you to prove yourself to me, that sort of thing. And that's a hard conversation because, you can come back and say, Bob, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm going to go to your boss, well, you and
Bob, I'm on my
stuff.
yacht in the, in the Mediterranean right now. And please,
well,
it's
I'm
very
thinking about
urgent.
how
Also,
plausible it
send
is.
gift cards for some reason. Give me the barcodes. So,
Yeah, yeah, but how plausible is it? Especially if these attackers, if they've infiltrated an organization, they know when you're on vacation too. And so, you can tell the help desk, hey, I reset my password before I left on vacation. I don't remember it. That's super
what's your
plausible.
mother's maiden name is not a defense anymore. That all the common password resets. If the AI has gotten access, if the attacker has gotten access to your email, they're going to know way too much about you.
I mean, there has to be a 2-factor equivalent to password reset. I mean, something other than being in the same room, because clearly my password doesn't get locked very often, but in the events that it does, usually it's being reset by somebody who's not in my state.
Yeah. Well, and then along those lines too. So you've got cloud providers, cloud identity providers, the Oktas, Pings, Entra IDs of the world. And I'll pick on Entra ID a little bit, just out of awareness, if nothing else. Entra ID tenant administrators aren't subject to all of the policies in the tenant. So you can go through the Entra ID tenant and set up all of these complicated policies and turn off self-service password reset and all that stuff. But the administrator of the tenant actually still has SSPR turned on. That's a completely separate hidden setting, that people don't know about, and it's not immediately clear that that needs to happen. And attackers know it and can prey on that too. That's something that's turned on that maybe you don't want on, that sort of thing. So I don't know. It's complicated. It really is.
All right, so then let's just bring this down to more of a VCF perspective. What can people be doing from a VCF perspective?
Well, that's a great question. VCF has got stuff in it that helps with all of the stuff. Getting people to realize that all the solutions to all of these issues well, maybe not all the issues, but a lot of the issues that we've been talking about have, heck, not that I'm advocating running vSphere 6 or anything, but a lot of these features have been around since, are pretty old actually, and they've gotten better and better and better as the versions progress. But, so this is a slide that I like. It's what do we do about it is underneath all of that stuff. And, so holistic defense, that zero trust that I'm talking about, actually doing that, strong identity management, strong access controls, telling people no, that's, and finding a way to tell people no, that it's not personal. This is just security, least privilege. Lateral movement, so defending holistically, we've got SSO, VCF SSO in 9.1 can talk to any identity provider that speaks SAML or OIDC or Active Directory, LDAP-S, any of the Oktas, Pings, Entra IDs, all of that stuff, which all speak OIDC. But having a different identity provider shouldn't be a big deal at this point. Role-based access control has been there and it's powerful. There's log management that can do monitoring, all of this stuff. Avi Load Balancers can help front-end applications and workloads to protect them. It's got a bunch of security.
Virtual patching.
Well, yeah, virtual patching and vDefend. So limiting lateral movement. Well, virtual patching is good for workloads. Limiting lateral movement, the idea that You want to stop these things as they're moving around. And vDefend is absolutely a wonderful tool for that. And I use the analogy, most networks are a street. There's all these houses on a street, and there's a gate at the end of the street. There's a firewall at the end of the street, maybe a guard there, whatever, but once you get past the guard, you can do whatever you want on the street. Well, vDefend and microsegmentation is having a guard or a perimeter around each house as well. You're still going to have one at the end of the street, but you've also got ones on the workloads themselves, so you can be very granular about stuff. And if you've there's a presentation, our colleague Chris McCain, who is a vDefend guy, has got a great presentation on Brickstorm and how vDefend stops Brickstorm with, I think it's 3 rules, 3 rules configured in the environment, and it stops it cold, and that's awesome.
So vDefend is like neighborhood watch, is what you're saying?
Pretty much. It's IDS, IPS, the network threat analysis stuff, neighborhood watch. It's automated. And that's the thing. When you stand up vDefend, let it do the automated stuff too. The attacks are being automated. Figure out how to let it be automated in blocking stuff, and then it's like patching. Figure out the other side of it. Figure out how you're going to know that it's blocked something, and how you're going to deal with that. Because we're to the point now where block first and ask questions later, rather than err on the side of like, well, what if it makes a mistake? What if it does? What if it makes a mistake and lets something through too?
Yeah. And I see on the slide here, you've got distributed switch in exclamations. Is that because there are people that are not using distributed switches, or?
There are people that don't believe in vMotion, Pete. And and vMotion is the singular biggest feature of vSphere, of VCF, for de-risking stuff, outage avoidance, maintenance, all of this stuff. And they remember vSphere 5. I had a workload back then. I had a database back then that had suffered a little blips every once in a while when it vMotioned, and we can't have that. It's better now, guys. We've had a decade and a half to work on it.
I feel like this goes in 2 directions, because on one hand, vMotion is continuously improving. That engineering team, though, by the way, is not small. It's the biggest I've seen it ever lately. Yeah. I talked to those cats. They're smart. So the stun impact, all that's gone down. It's gotten better. So please reevaluate that. On the other hand, I feel like to a certain degree, and this is more of like a meta argument across like how we consider the risk of patching and breaking something, even at an application layer. I think organizations need to think more from, I can recover from I patched my IIS server and it blipped the app and I had to go revert something. The revert from a ransomware attack is a lot uglier. And I think to a certain degree, people have focused too much on the latter pain and not the former there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. That's where I'm getting at, what I'm getting at with the de-risk patching, de-risk workload patching. You've got snapshots. Snapshots are definitely not the same as they were in vSphere 5. They're a lot better. They're like
patch. You can revert, have load balancers.
John, you know more about them than I do. Like all of the cool stuff in vSAN and all that stuff. The vSAN data protection appliance. Everyone who's a vSAN customer, correct me if I'm wrong here, but everyone who's a vSAN customer can use the data protection appliance and create protection groups and continuous snapshots. Like in my lab, I've got it set up to take a snapshot of all of my lab stuff every 2 hours. And I think between the last time I looked, which has been a few weeks, all of the snapshots, it was 84 snapshots when I looked times 25 VMs or whatever.
There's no performance impact, and
there's no performance impact, and compression take care of all of it too. So I think it was using 25 gigs of space for 2,000 snapshots.
It's very efficient. And there's one other efficient thing help you with testing workload patching is you can go take a snapshot interval and say create a link clone, and it instantly just creates a delta, so it uses no space. You can then go in a bubble network or an isolated network, go test your application patch, be like, oh, that didn't work, let's try that again. And that way you can test your patches without prod. And to be fair, I've seen people actually do this at large scale with SRM, literally use SRM, use the DR, use a isolated DR environment of like a large factor application to do that. But this is use snapshots to test application patches, so then you can de-risk them and get them through your cab much sooner. The platform.
Honestly, though,
you actually have facts not just feelings about, well, I'm anxious about this. You have a fact. It's going to work,
Yeah.
and
I think the younger generation probably doesn't have the trauma that some of the graybeards have with snapshots. That if you've ever been burned by having some multiple snapshots and your performance just
You can also
completely
schedule
coming to a
deleting a
halt.
snapshot now, by the way, Pete. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but you can actually just say, hey, any snap over 3 days that was manually taken, just delete it. And
Yeah.
so, to be fair, long running vSAN snaps, they just use space. They don't hurt. They
Well,
don't
that's the other-
psychologically damage you in the way that VMFS long running ones did. But
Yeah, well, and just the consolidation when you delete them and that was horrific back in the day at times.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you forgot one. But John, to your point, the fact that you can schedule a snapshot deletion now, it's a scheduled task. Heck, Power CLI, just get VM, get snapshot, new snapshot, whatever. Just chain them together, let it run, and then do your patching. And then in a week, just get VM, get snapshot, remove snapshot. Done.
I'm lazy, Bob. I just it's under the scheduled task in the UI now. It shipped it quietly at some point. I think around 83.
John has Claude managing his snapshots.
Well, yeah, actually, I have experimented with having AI manage a vSphere environment as well, and it's kind of surprising how it chooses to do things. But yeah, it was kind of wild. But at any rate, we could talk snapshots, clones, the protection and recovery, data protection appliance, all that stuff. Great tools. People should use them to fix their processes and gain familiarity and all of this stuff. And so, yeah.
Nice.
Well, we just told everyone they have to patch sooner and they have to go through this stuff. So it's good to discuss not only the capabilities, but also just the operational workflow of how you can do that. Or you can have Avi do a virtual patch for now, then you can test the actual patch on half of your VMs. You start with 1 or 2, start sending load in the load balancer there, scale it up. Yep. Okay, we got good responses. Let's go to 50% load. Okay, half the farm is now patched. Okay, let's go to 100%. Okay, let's remove the old ones.
Staged rollouts, huge, and logarithmic, you do 1 or 2, then you do, 4, then you do 8. Now, yeah. And then
I also like doing it where you spin up the new VMs side by side. Like you do the patch in your base image, then you use automation or something to clone it. So rather than actually even going and patching that web server farm, you're just creating new ones that are already patched. You're keeping the old ones there. So the revert is literally just a load balancer change to go back. So that way you're not having to ever figure out how to undo a Tomcat patch or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's just the Kubernetes modern app sort of idea of you always fail forward, and that's absolutely dead on. So
I like it. Well, the next slide that I saw on this presentation, and I think we should spend a minute looking at it. It's defense in depth with VMware Cloud Foundation, and it kind of covers all the various layers of security inside of VCF. For those listening at home, jump onto the YouTube channel at VMware Cloud Foundation YouTube channel to actually see the presentation. But can you walk through the various layers inside of VCF for security?
Sure. Yeah, there's a ton of layers. This graphic is actually very simplified. We've got the base infrastructure itself. Even ESX has got multiple layers of protections in it. There's the what we consider the hypervisor. There's protections around the guest operating systems. There's mandatory access controls. There's layers inside the code signing, all kinds of stuff inside of that. And we call that hardened infrastructure in the context of this graphic here, and then and we've got hardening guides for all that stuff. The VCF 9.1 security configuration guide is out, and you can follow that to make sure all that stuff is turned on and enabled, that sort of thing. And then you go up a level, that lateral security, the blocking the lateral movement, the vDefends of the world, IDS, IPS, Avi load balancers, all of that stuff that you can get good visibility into what's happening. There's also stuff of VCF operations for networks, visibility there, all kinds of stuff going on there to be able to monitor and see more holistically what's going on, and then be able to block it too. And then the cyber resilient recovery, we've kind of been dancing around this, but as part of our advanced cyber compliance package, the cyber recovery piece takes that data protection and recovery, that vSAN data protection appliance, and enables replication. It enables the cyber recovery thing is allows you to restore things, but also clean that malware off. If you do think that you've got a situation where there's been an attack or you've got malware or whatever, you can use tools, Carbon Black, you can use CrowdStrike tools to scan the appliance or scan the workload itself and make a determination, hey, is this thing infected or not? Can I clean it, or do I need to go? It's kind of the cyber recovery thing is kind of like a DVR for snapshots and points and recovery restore points. And so you can go back another one, that sort of thing, and try to figure out where you want to restore versus your data, that sort of thing. And so
when you've got visibility into the entropy and change rate, so if it's a very high change rate, that tends to be when the campaign kicks off, and entropy generally means encryption.
So the rate of change on disk, exactly. When the rate of change on disk goes oddly up, something's going on. Sometimes it's legit, you're patching or some sort of upgrade or data conversion or whatever, fine, but in general, it means not good things in the context of attacks.
What's nice is also if you find a point that, clearly it failed EDR, you can tag that snap. Okay, we're never going to recover from that. It is now tagged. It is bad in catalog. Let's go back. So,
well, or maybe you want to look at it, maybe your incident response folks, and it behooves everyone now to probably have an idea who they're going to call if something does happen, to have an incident response team if you're a large enough organization, or do you have a consultant that on retainer or something like that, somebody that that you can call if there's something going on, and they might want to look at it. They might want to take a look at what's going on, and so having that data is important too. But you probably don't want to restore it straight up.
Yeah, and doing that from the isolated recovery environment is actually really nice too, because you can do all that cleaning but not affect your production environment. And then when you're in a clean state, then you can actually recover.
That's a really good point, Pete. I didn't mention that at all, but the idea of an IRE, the isolated environment, and now you can do that. It's all on premises, so it's under your control. Like costs are under control. You can do it. You can engineer your environment so that it's, it's all vSAN. vSAN can now be a repository. Can do immutable snapshots and all kinds of stuff to help support that as well. And so a lot of capabilities there.
Nice. Well, yeah, I know you do a lot of these talks, and you've been really good at blogging and doing demos, and definitely you have become over the years the go-to person for security. So where can people go to find more information about security hardening?
Well, security hardening, we've got a lot of stuff. So out in a GitHub repository, GitHub is not a perfect way of disseminating information, but it's good. I like it. There's a lot of folks that like it. And so this is a QR code. If your information security professionals often are allergic to QR codes, they're also allergic to redirectors. So the brcm.tech is actually bit.ly on the back end. But if you just go to GitHub, go to the github.com/VMware, search for the word security in our repositories. We've got like 300 repositories. Search for the word security, and you'll find the DISA-STIG stuff for the U.S. federal government, and it's a whole ton of information about various things. We've got the hardening guidance. The hardening guidance, as always, it's a spreadsheet. It's got all the different things that you should check for all the different components of VCF in it. You can filter by it. It's meant to be guidelines. It's meant to be easy to use. It's got Power CLI in there. And then so that you can do the stuff in bulk. And then we've also started we've got a compliance repository as well, a compliance library, the regulatory compliance library, RCL, 3-letter acronyms rule apparently. But we got a lot of material out there, and we're also publishing it, not just Excel spreadsheets, but CSVs and Markdown, so the machines can read them too, like in these machines. AI, double-edged sword, but they've there's a lot of stuff out in the repository, and Q&A and white papers. There's a zero trust white paper out there. We've had a lot of questions about how we apply, how VCF can be used to meet the requirements of like NIST 800-2. It's not 240. They're all mixed up in my mind, but the zero trust requirements from NIST and various world governments and things. So lots of material about that. So go poke around. If you see a problem, file an issue, that sort of thing. We're just trying to make it easy to use.
Well, man, I have to say, in this new age of agentic AI, and I feel like security is definitely going to be a very common topic this year. So, I personally, this is my extension to you to man, John. We should do a whole series with Bob, but certainly have you on as a recurring guest. I feel like this is going to be a story that evolves at least over the next year or so. So, yeah, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I'd love to be. I always love talking to you guys. So yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. And yeah, Pete, I saw a coffee mug not that long ago that said, "I've become important at work and I hate it." And that's kind of how I feel lately. Like security has always been this thing that people don't pay a whole lot of attention to, and that's been bad too. But having it all at once here is kind of a mess too. So
Yeah,
we'll get through it.
We're all putting
Good
our
stuff.
security hats on now.
Nice. All right, Bob. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.